The message arrived at midnight, Earth Standard Time. It came on every frequency in every human language, broadcast to all 12 colony worlds at once. The Velkari did not ask. They did not negotiate. They simply informed humanity of what would happen next. Admiral Yuki Tanaka read the translation 3 times. The words were simple enough. Humanity would surrender its outer colonies within 30 standard days. Failure to comply would result in total annihilation. The Velkari hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered 4,000 star systems. They had never lost a war. They did not expect to start now. Tanaka set down the document and looked out the window of her office on Luna Station. Earth hung in the darkness, blue and green and fragile. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She had hoped it would never come. The Velkari were not evil. They were simply old, so old that they had forgotten what it meant to struggle. Their empire had grown fat and slow over millennia of easy victories. They looked at humanity and saw what they always saw, another primitive species to be absorbed or destroyed. Tanaka had studied every war they had ever fought. She knew their tactics, their weapons, their psychology. She also knew something the Velkari did not. Every species they had conquered shared one thing in common. They had all fought defensively. They had all waited for the Velkari to come to them. They had all tried to hold their ground, and they had all been crushed beneath the weight of an empire that could afford to lose 100 ships for everyone it destroyed. Humanity could not win that kind of war. Tanaka knew this with absolute certainty. The Earth Navy had 94 warships. Intelligence reports indicated the Velkari were sending 800. The math was simple and brutal. But Tanaka had not risen to command the entire human fleet by accepting simple math. The United Terran Council met 3 days later in an emergency session. Representatives from all 12 colonies attended via quantum link. The chamber was filled with fear. Tanaka could see it in their faces, hear it in their voices. They spoke of negotiation, of compromise, of buying time. Some spoke of surrender. Tanaka waited until they had exhausted themselves. Then she stood and walked to the center of the chamber. She was not a tall woman. She was not physically imposing. But when she spoke, the room fell silent. "They expect us to defend," she said. "Every species before us tried to defend. They built walls, they fortified positions, they waited for the enemy to come." She paused. "They died." She activated the holographic display. A map of human space appeared, showing their 12 worlds scattered across a small corner of the galaxy. Red icons marked the approaching Velkari armada. "We cannot match their numbers. We cannot match their technology. We cannot match their resources." Tanaka's voice was calm, almost gentle. "But we can do something they have never seen before. We can attack." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The representative from Mars Colony spoke up. "Attack, with 94 ships against 800. That is not bravery, Admiral. That is suicide." "No," Tanaka replied. "Suicide is waiting here for them to burn our worlds one by one. Suicide is letting them fight the war they want to fight." She changed the display, showing tactical projections. "The Velkari have not faced a serious threat in 3,000 years. Their tactics are ancient. Their formations are predictable. They fight the same way they have always fought because it has always worked." She looked around the room, meeting each representative's eyes in turn. "We will not fight their war. We will fight ours. We will hit them where they do not expect. We will refuse to stand still. We will make them bleed for every light year they advance." Her voice hardened. "And when they realize they are not facing another conquered species, when they understand that humanity will not break, they will learn something no enemy has taught them in 12,000 years." "What is that?" the Mars representative asked. "Fear." The vote took 6 hours. Arguments raged. Some called Tanaka mad, others called her a warmonger. But in the end, the choice was simple. Surrender meant slavery or death. Fighting meant possible death. Humanity chose to fight. Tanaka returned to Luna Station and summoned her captains. They gathered in the war room, 53 men and women who commanded the ships that would decide humanity's fate. They were young, most of them. The Earth Navy was young. Humanity's presence in space was young. They did not have centuries of tradition weighing them down. Tanaka saw this as an advantage. The Velkari believe they are invincible, she told them. They have believed this for so long that it has become truth in their minds. They look at us and see insects. They see a nuisance to be crushed. She smiled, and there was something cold in it. They have never fought something that refuses to be crushed. They have never faced an enemy that hits back harder than expected. She pulled up images of Velkari warships. They were beautiful in their way, massive and elegant, built for shock and awe. They were designed to intimidate as much as to destroy. Their ships are powerful, Tanaka continued, but they are slow. They are built for fleet battles, for lines of fire, for honorable combat. She switched to images of Earth Navy vessels. They were smaller, angular, ugly by comparison. Our ships are not built for honor. They are built to kill. Captain Marcus Chen of the destroyer Relentless leaned forward. He was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and a reputation for unconventional thinking. What is the plan, Admiral? The plan is simple, Tanaka said. We do not wait for them. We do not defend. We advance. She highlighted the Kepler corridor on the map, the expected invasion route. We seed this entire region with weapons, missiles, mines, sensor platforms. We turn every asteroid into a threat. And when they enter our space expecting easy prey, we teach them what fear tastes like. The room was silent. Then slowly Chen began to smile. Others followed. These were not politicians. These were warriors. And Tanaka was offering them something no human commander had ever offered before, the chance to strike first. The Velkari have conquered thousands of species, Tanaka said, her voice rising. They have grown comfortable, lazy. They have forgotten what it means to fight an enemy that wants to hurt them. She placed her hands on the table and leaned forward. We are going to remind them. Across human space, the Earth Navy began to move. Ships loaded weapons. Crews drilled for battle. And in the darkness between stars, humanity prepared to do something no conquered species had ever done. They prepared to attack. The Kepler corridor stretched across 40 light-years of empty space. It was the fastest route from Velkari territory to Earth's outer colonies. It was also about to become the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Relentless and watched his crew work. They moved with purpose, checking systems, running simulations, preparing for a battle that would come in less than 3 weeks. The destroyer was small by galactic standards, barely 200 meters long, but Chen had learned to love her. She was fast, she was tough, and she was mean. Missile pods are loaded, his weapons officer reported. All 800 ready to deploy. Chen nodded. 800 missiles might sound like a lot. It was nothing compared to what the Velkari carried. But these missiles were different. They were built using technology that humanity had developed in secret over the past decade. Each one carried an artificial intelligence that could think, learn, and adapt. They did not simply fly toward their targets. They hunted. Admiral Tanaka had called it Doctrine Fenris, named after the wolf of ancient Earth mythology. The doctrine was simple: never fight fair. The Velkari expected honorable battle between fleets. They expected formations, tactics, rules. Humanity would give them none of these things. Across the Kepler corridor, small teams in stealth shuttles were busy. They moved through asteroid fields, landing on dead moons, hiding in debris clouds. Everywhere they went, they left gifts behind. Sensor platforms that could track enemy ships. Missile pods hidden in craters. Mines disguised as rocks. The corridor was becoming a trap. Chen received updates every few hours. The operation was going smoothly. In 2 weeks, the Kepler corridor would contain more hidden weapons than the entire Earth Navy, and the Velkari would have no idea. Far across the galaxy, Supreme Commander Thalvex reviewed his orders aboard the dreadnought Eternal Conquest. The ship was 3 kilometers long, one of the largest vessels in the hegemony fleet. It carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Thalvex had commanded it for 2 centuries. He studied the data on the human species with mild interest. They were young, barely a few thousand years old as a spacefaring civilization. They had colonized only 12 worlds. Their technology was primitive by Velkari standards. Their ships were small and crude. "A minor campaign," Thalvex said to his tactical officer. "We will be finished within 30 days. The tactical officer, a younger Velkari named Sorrel, nodded in agreement. Their fleet numbers fewer than 100 vessels. They cannot hope to resist. Thalvex closed the data file. He had fought dozens of campaigns against primitive species. They always followed the same pattern. First came defiance, then desperation, then defeat. The humans would be no different. The Velkari Armada departed 3 days later. 800 capital ships moved in perfect formation, their drives burning bright against the darkness. Escort vessels flanked them in precise patterns. Supply ships followed behind, carrying enough resources for a year-long campaign. It was a magnificent sight, a display of power that had broken the will of countless species. Back in human space, Tanaka watched the enemy approach through a network of hidden sensors. She noted their formation, their speed, their confidence. They were not even attempting to scout ahead. Why would they? No enemy had ever posed a serious threat. "They are moving exactly as predicted," she told her staff. "Traditional invasion formation. Dreadnoughts at the center, escort ships on the flanks, supply line behind." "They are making this easy," Chen said over the communication link. "They have no reason to do otherwise," Tanaka replied. "In their entire history, caution has never been necessary." She paused. "We are going to change that." The final week before contact was the hardest. Human crews drilled constantly, practicing maneuvers they had never tried in actual combat. Tanaka had developed entirely new tactics for this war: hit-and-run strikes, coordinated swarm attacks, ambushes from multiple vectors. The Earth Navy had trained for these scenarios for years, but training was not combat. Chen pushed his crew hard. The relentless ran combat drills 18 hours a day. They practiced emergency repairs, rapid missile launches, close-range attacks. They learned to think of their small ship not as a weakness but as a strength. The Velkari dreadnoughts were powerful, but they were slow. Their weapons were designed for long-range fleet battles. Up close, they were vulnerable. "Remember," Chen told his crew, "we are not trying to match them. We are trying to hurt them. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can respond. Make them afraid of every shadow." On the last night before the enemy arrived, Tanaka broadcast a message to every human ship in the fleet. Her face appeared on screens across the corridor, calm and determined. "Tomorrow we meet the enemy," she said. "They believe this will be easy. They believe we are prey. They are wrong." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Our ancestors survived ice ages. They survived plagues. They survived wars that should have ended our species. We are still here because we refuse to give up. We adapt. We overcome. We endure." Her voice hardened. "The Velkari have forgotten what struggle means. They have grown soft in their dominance. Tomorrow, we remind them that the universe is not safe. Tomorrow, we show them what humanity can do when our survival is at stake." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Do not fight for glory. Fight for your families. Fight for your worlds. Fight for every human who will come after us. Make the enemy pay for every meter they advance. Make them remember this day for the rest of their existence." The message ended. Across the fleet, crews sat in silence. Then slowly they began to check their weapons one more time. The Velkari Armada entered the Kepler corridor at dawn, human standard time. They moved in perfect formation, 800 ships advancing like a wall of steel and fire. Supreme Commander Thalvex stood on his bridge and watched the empty space ahead. "Any sign of enemy vessels?" he asked. "None, Supreme Commander," Sorrel replied. "They appear to have retreated." Thalvex made a sound of contempt. "Cowards, they flee before we even arrive." He gestured toward the tactical display. "Continue advance. We will reach their first colony world within 2 days." The armada pushed deeper into the corridor. Around them, asteroids drifted silently. Debris clouds floated in the darkness. Everything seemed still, peaceful, empty. Thalvex did not notice the thousands of small power signatures coming online in the rocks around him. He did not see the hidden eyes watching his fleet from every direction. He did not understand that he had just walked into the largest ambush in galactic history. On the bridge of the Relentless, Chen watched the enemy fleet enter the kill zone. His hand hovered over the attack command. Beside him, his weapons officer counted down the seconds. "They are in position," the officer said. Chen opened a channel to Admiral Tanaka. "Admiral, the trap is set." Tanaka's voice came back cold and steady. "Spring it." Chen pressed the button. Across the Kepler corridor, 40,000 missiles woke up and began to hunt. The first missile emerged from an asteroid 3 kilometers from the Eternal Conquest. Then another. Then 1,000 more. Across the entire length of the Kepler corridor, hidden weapons platforms opened fire simultaneously. The darkness came alive with streaks of light. Supreme Commander Thalvex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red icons appeared everywhere, filling the screen like a swarm of insects. His sensors could not count them fast enough. 40,000 contacts, 50,000. The numbers kept climbing. "Shields up," he shouted. "All ships defensive formation." But his orders came too late. The Velkari fleet was spread across thousands of kilometers in a traditional advance formation. It was designed to project power, not to defend against attack from all directions. The missiles came from above, below, and every side at once. The first dreadnought died before it could even raise shields. 3,000 missiles struck it in a concentrated wave, overwhelming its armor in seconds. The great ship broke apart, spilling fire and debris into the void. 2 more followed within moments. On the bridge of the Relentless, Chen watched the chaos unfold through his tactical sensors. The Velkari point defense systems were firing wildly, trying to shoot down the incoming threats. They destroyed hundreds of missiles, but these missiles were not flying in straight lines. They were dancing, spinning, cooperating. When one was destroyed, others adjusted their paths. The swarm learned from every failed attack and became more deadly. "The AI coordination is working," Chen's tactical officer reported. "Enemy point defense effectiveness is dropping. They cannot predict our missiles' behavior." Chen smiled grimly. "Time for Phase 2. All ships engage." The Earth Navy emerged from hiding. 71 human warships appeared from behind asteroids, from within debris clouds, from positions no enemy had detected. They did not form lines. They did not advance in formation. They attacked from every direction at once, like wolves falling upon a wounded herd. The Relentless led a pack of 6 destroyers directly into the Velkari formation. Chen pushed his engines to maximum, diving between the massive enemy ships at speeds that should have been impossible. At this range, the Velkari main batteries could not track them. Their weapons were designed for long-range fleet combat, not close-quarters brawling. "Fire everything," Chen ordered. The Relentless unleashed its weapons at point-blank range. Missiles streaked into enemy hulls. Energy weapons carved through armor designed to resist attacks from kilometers away, not meters. A Velkari cruiser tried to turn its guns toward the tiny human ship, but Chen was already gone, racing past to attack the next target. Thalvex tried to restore order to his fleet. He shouted commands, attempting to reorganize his ships into defensive clusters. But the Velkari had not trained for this kind of battle. They were accustomed to enemies who stood still, who fought with honor, who followed rules. The humans followed no rules. "Supreme Commander," Sorrel reported, voice shaking, "we have lost 63 ships, 74. The count continues to rise." "Where are the enemy capital ships?" Thalvex demanded. "Find their fleet command." "There is no fleet command," Sorrel replied helplessly. "They are not operating as a single force. Each ship is acting independently." That could not understand what he was seeing. This was not warfare. This was chaos. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking from the darkness and vanishing before his ships could respond. They were not trying to hold territory or protect positions. They were simply causing as much damage as possible. Admiral commanded the battle from a small station hidden in an asteroid field. She watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The plan was working better than expected. They were confused, disorganized, taking losses far beyond their predictions. But she knew this could not last forever. "All ships," she broadcast. "Phase 2 complete, begin withdrawal. Repeat, begin withdrawal." The human fleet responded instantly. They broke contact, racing away from the enemy at maximum speed. They tried to pursue, but they were too slow. Within minutes, the human ships had vanished into the darkness. Stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists. The tactical display showed the wreckage of nearly 200 ships drifting through the corridor. 200 ships, in less than an hour. "Damage assessment," he said quietly. Sorrel's voice was hollow. 187 ships destroyed, 43 heavily damaged. Supply convoy suffered significant losses. He paused. Enemy losses estimated at 12 vessels. 12 vessels. The humans had destroyed nearly 200 warships and lost only 12 in return. Had never heard of such a ratio. It was not possible. It should not be possible. "What are your orders, Supreme Commander?" Sorrel asked. Stared at the debris field that had once been part of his fleet. For 3,000 years they had known only victory. They had crushed every enemy, conquered every resistance. They had believed themselves untouchable. That belief had died in the corridor. "Regroup," ordered finally. "All surviving ships, defensive formation. We need time to repair and reorganize." His voice was flat, empty of its earlier confidence. "Send a message to Hegemony Command. Tell them the situation has become complicated." Across the corridor, in the scattered wreckage of the battle, guided the Relentless toward the rally point. His ship had taken damage during the fighting. One engine was offline and the hull had been breached in 2 places. But they had survived. They had won. "Casualties?" he asked. 7 wounded, his first officer reported. "No dead, we were lucky." Nodded. Luck had played a part, but so had training, technology, and tactics they had never seen. He looked at the tactical replay of the battle, watching the enemy formation dissolve into chaos. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had crushed everyone who opposed them. Today, they had learned that humanity would not be so easily crushed. Voice came over the fleet channel. "All ships, excellent work. The first phase is complete, but this war is far from over." Her tone hardened. "The enemy will regroup. They will adapt. They will come at us harder than before. Enjoy this victory, but prepare for the next battle. We have hurt them. Now we need to break them." Closed the channel and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, they were licking their wounds and trying to understand what had happened. They would figure it out eventually. They would learn to counter human tactics. The next battle would be harder. But for now, humanity had done something no species had done in. They had made the hegemony bleed. And they were just getting started. 6 months of war changed everything. Had expected a quick campaign, 30 days at most. Instead, he found himself trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. The humans refused to fight the way enemies were supposed to fight. They refused to stand still. They refused to die quietly. Every time his fleet advanced, they found traps, mined asteroid fields, hidden weapons platforms. ambush points that turned simple navigation into deadly gambles. The humans had turned their own territory into a maze of death. Worse, they attacked constantly, not in great battles but in small strikes that never stopped. Supply convoys disappeared in the night. Repair stations exploded without warning. Scout ships ventured into seemingly empty space and never returned. It was like fighting smoke. The Relentless had become a legend. Captain and his crew operated deep behind enemy lines, appearing from nowhere to destroy targets of opportunity before vanishing again. They had sunk 3 cruisers, 12 escort ships, and a fuel depot in the past 2 months alone. They had placed a bounty on head large enough to buy a small planet. Did not care about bounties, he cared about results. New target, his tactical officer reported. Supply convoy, 12 ships, light escort. They are carrying replacement parts for their dreadnoughts. Studied the data. The convoy was moving through an empty region, far from any support. They had clearly chosen this route to avoid human patrols. They did not know that the Relentless had been tracking them for 3 days. "How many escort ships?" asked. 4 destroyers, light armament. Smiled, plot an intercept course. We hit them in 6 hours. The attack lasted 12 minutes. The Relentless and 2 other human destroyers emerged from hiding and struck the convoy with overwhelming force. The escort ships tried to respond, but human missiles were already among them. 2 destroyers died in the first volley. The supply ships scattered in panic, but there was nowhere to run. When it was over, all 12 supply ships were drifting wrecks. The surviving escort vessels fled at maximum speed, too damaged to continue the fight. The humans had lost nothing. Surveyed the destruction with grim satisfaction. These supply ships carried parts that they desperately needed. Without them, their damaged dreadnoughts would remain crippled. The humans were not just killing enemy ships. They were strangling the entire invasion. Far from the front lines, the hegemony was beginning to fracture. News of the human resistance had spread across the empire. Subject species who had been conquered centuries ago whispered about the small race that was bleeding the invincible. Some began to wonder if the hegemony was as powerful as they had always believed. On 3 worlds, rebellions broke out. They were small, quickly crushed, but they were a sign of something larger. The Empire's image of invincibility was cracking. Received reports of these uprisings with growing dread. He understood what they meant. If he could not defeat the humans quickly, the entire Empire might begin to unravel. Fear that had held subject species in line was starting to fade. He requested reinforcements from Hegemony Command. The response was slow in coming. The High Council could not believe that a primitive species was causing such trouble. They sent 50 additional ships, barely enough to replace his losses. Then came the disaster at Station. Station was a forward command post that had established to coordinate his forces. It was defended by 30 warships and protected by layers of automated defenses. It should have been safe. Admiral did not attack it with ships. She attacked it with people. 20 small transports, disguised as debris from earlier battles, drifted close to the station over several days. Each transport carried 100 human marines in powered armor. When they were close enough, they launched. They had not fought a ground battle in 8,000 years. They had forgotten how. Their station was designed to resist ship-based attacks, not boarding parties. The human marines breached the hull in 12 locations simultaneously and began fighting through the corridors. It was brutal close-quarters combat. They were larger than humans, stronger, with natural armor that could stop small-caliber weapons. But the humans were faster, more coordinated, and utterly ruthless. They moved in teams, covering each other, never stopping. They had trained for this kind of fighting their entire lives. Within 4 hours, Station belonged to humanity. But the real prize was not the station itself. It was the damaged dreadnought that had been docked there for repairs. The ship was called Wrath of Ancients, one of the oldest vessels in the fleet. Its engines were offline, its weapons depleted, but its technology was intact. Human engineers swarmed over the captured ship. They studied every system, every component, every piece of alien technology they could find. What should have taken decades to understand, they learned in weeks. Human scientists worked around the clock, driven by desperation and brilliance. The results exceeded all expectations. Within 2 months, humanity had combined Velkari technology with their own innovations to create something entirely new. They called it the Prometheus. The ship was massive by human standards, nearly a kilometer long. It carried weapons that merged alien power systems with human targeting technology. Its engines were faster than anything the Velkari had ever built. Its armor incorporated materials that human scientists did not fully understand but had learned to manufacture. Chen was among the first to see it. He stood on an observation deck and stared at the great ship as it underwent final preparations. "She is beautiful," he said quietly. Admiral Tanaka stood beside him. Her face was older now, worn by months of endless pressure, but her eyes still burned with determination. "She is a symbol," Tanaka replied, "proof that we can do more than survive. We can adapt. We can grow. We can become something the Velkari never expected." Chen turned to face her. "What happens now?" Tanaka smiled, and there was something dangerous in it. "Now we stop running. The enemy has retreated to Bastion Eternal, their greatest fortress. They believe it will protect them." She paused. "They are wrong." Across human space, the fleet began to gather. 71 warships remained operational, joined now by the Prometheus and dozens of newly constructed vessels. They were still outnumbered. The Velkari still had 300 ships at Bastion Eternal, but the balance had shifted. Thalvex received reports of the human fleet massing. He studied the images of the Prometheus with something close to horror. The humans had taken his technology and improved it. They had learned in months what had taken the Velkari centuries to develop. A message arrived from Hegemony Command. The words were simple and brutal: "End this, whatever the cost." Thalvex read the message and felt the weight of 12,000 years of history pressing down on him. His species had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy they could not crush. Now, for the first time, he was not certain of victory. He stared at the star map showing human fleet movements. They were coming. They were not running or hiding anymore. They were advancing. For the first time in his long life, Thalvex felt afraid. Bastion Eternal hung in the darkness like a metal moon. The station was enormous, larger than most cities, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. It had been built 6,000 years ago as the ultimate fortress. No enemy had ever breached its walls. No attacking force had ever survived long enough to try. Thalvex had gathered his remaining 300 ships around the station in a defensive sphere. He had learned from his earlier mistakes. No more formations designed for show. No more assumptions about enemy tactics. He would fight a defensive battle, use the station's weapons to support his fleet, and crush the humans when they attacked. Admiral Tanaka studied the enemy position from the bridge of the Prometheus. The great ship hummed with power beneath her feet, a reminder of how far humanity had come in just 6 months. Around her, the fleet waited in formation. 71 warships, plus the Prometheus, plus thousands of missile platforms and automated weapons. It was everything humanity had. "They expect us to attack the fleet first," Chen said. He stood beside her, his face grim. The past months had aged him. Break through their defenses, then assault the station. "That is what they expect," Tanaka agreed. "So we will not do that." She activated the tactical display, showing the battle plan she had developed over weeks of careful preparation. The human fleet would engage the Velkari ships, drawing them away from the station. But that was only the distraction. "The station is their strength," Tanaka said. It is also their weakness. They have not defended against ground assault in millennia. They do not believe anyone would be foolish enough to try. Chen understood. We are going to board it. 50,000 Marines, Tanaka confirmed. Hidden in modified transports throughout our fleet. While the ships fight, they will breach the station. Her voice hardened. The Velkari believe Bastion Eternal is untouchable. Today, they learn otherwise. The battle began at dawn, human standard time. The human fleet advanced in a scattered formation, approaching from multiple directions. Velkari weapons opened fire, filling space with deadly energy. The Prometheus led the charge, its shields absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any other human ship. Tanaka had expected heavy losses. She got them. Human ships died in the first minutes of fighting, overwhelmed by concentrated fire from the station's massive weapons. But they kept coming, refusing to retreat, drawing the Velkari fleet further from their defensive positions. Chen commanded a strike group of destroyers, weaving between enemy fire with the skill born of months of combat. His ships targeted Velkari engines and weapon systems, crippling rather than destroying, forcing the enemy to choose between pursuing damaged ships or maintaining formation. Enemy fleet is engaging, his tactical officer reported. They are moving away from the station. Good, Chen replied, keep them busy. While the fleets clashed, transport ships slipped through the chaos. They were small, easily overlooked in the massive battle. They carried no weapons worth mentioning. But each one held 500 human Marines in powered armor, the finest soldiers humanity had ever produced. The transports reached Bastion Eternal and began cutting through the hull. The station's automated defenses tried to respond, but they were designed to fight ships, not tiny craft pressed against the metal skin. Human Marines poured through the breaches, spreading through the corridors like a flood. Inside the station, chaos erupted. The Velkari garrison had not trained for this kind of fighting. They were administrators, technicians, officers who had never seen ground combat. The human Marines moved with deadly precision, clearing room after room, advancing toward the command center. Chen received word that the boarding had begun. He smiled grimly and pushed his ship harder into the enemy formation. Every Velkari ship focused on the fleet battle was one less ship defending the station. Every minute he kept them occupied was another minute for the Marines to advance. StarBound-X realized too late what was happening. Reports flooded his command center, each one worse than the last. Human soldiers inside the station, fighting in the corridors, advancing toward his position. Pull the fleet back, he ordered desperately. Defend the station. But the human fleet would not let them disengage. Every time a Velkari ship tried to break away, human vessels swarmed it. The battle had become a trap, and StarBound-X was caught inside. In the station's corridors, the Marines pushed forward. Chen had left his damaged ship in the hands of his first officer and joined the ground assault. He led a company through the central hub, fighting toward the command center. The Velkari fought back with increasing desperation, but they could not stop the advance. Chen reached the command center doors and planted breaching charges. The explosion tore through the reinforced metal, and his Marines rushed inside. StarBound-X stood waiting for them. The Supreme Commander was tall, over 3 meters, covered in natural armor that gleamed under the emergency lights. In his hands, he held ancient weapons of his noble house, blades that had killed thousands over his long life. Chen did not hesitate. He raised his sidearm and fired twice. The shot struck StarBound-X in the chest. The Supreme Commander staggered, disbelief on his alien face. He had expected a duel, an honorable combat between commanders. He had forgotten that humans did not fight for honor. StarBound-X fell. His ancient weapons clattered to the floor. Around him, his staff surrendered or died trying to fight. Chen stepped over the body and activated the station's communication system. Attention, all Velkari forces. Bastion Eternal has fallen. Your supreme commander is dead. Further resistance is pointless." Outside, the Valkyrie fleet heard the broadcast. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the ships began powering down their weapons. The battle was over. The war ended 3 weeks later. The hegemony sent diplomats to negotiate peace. They had no choice. News of Bastion Eternal's fall had spread across the Empire. Subject species were rising in rebellion on dozens of worlds. The Valkyrie could not fight humanity and their own subjects at the same time. The terms were simple. Humanity would keep all its colonies. The Valkyrie would withdraw from a buffer zone of 200 systems. Reparations would be paid for the destruction caused by the invasion. It was more than anyone had dared hope for. Admiral Tanaka addressed the United Terran Council one final time. She stood before them, older now, marked by the war she had led humanity through, but her voice was strong. "They thought us primitives," she said, "short-lived creatures who built ugly ships and fought without honor. They were right about all of these things." She paused, looking around the chamber, "but they forgot something important." She straightened, her eyes bright. "Primitive things that survive learn to be dangerous. Short-lived creatures fight with desperate intensity, and beings without honor will do whatever is necessary to protect what they love." The chamber was silent. Then slowly applause began. It grew until it filled the room, wave after wave of sound. Across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear for millennia heard the story of humanity's victory. They heard how the small, primitive race had faced the greatest empire in existence and refused to break. They heard how humans had turned every disadvantage into strength, every weakness into a weapon. The Valkyrie hegemony would survive, but it would never be the same. Its image of invincibility was shattered forever, and in the shadows of the empire, conquered species began to dream of freedom. On Earth, people looked up at the stars with new eyes. They had faced extinction and survived. They had fought the untouchable and won. They were no longer prey hiding in the darkness. They were something new. They were human. And the galaxy would never forget it.